Okay, welcome everybody to our weekly training session. Today we're going to get started talking about investment properties, right? That's part of our wealth building series, and we really want to know that our agents that are also investors have the right way to do things and think about everything they need to think about, and also give good advice to our clients. I'm going to share an Excel file that I've created many years ago. Excel file. There it is. And that kind of helps you guide through the conversation of how do I measure a good investment properties. So let's talk about, first of all, in general, classes of investment properties, right? You'll hear people say class A, class B, class C, class D, right? And it's true for commercial and residential properties. It really means what kind of environment the property is in. Class A would be like a brand new neighborhood, a prestige neighborhood in Plano, uptown Dallas, Prosper, and stuff like that. So really the nice high-end neighborhood, usually they are newer as well, but not necessarily. If you look at
what?
Newer, like new
Newer
construction, and then, but it's not always the case, right? If you look at Windhaven in Willow Bend in Plano, right? Willow Bend is the most expensive neighborhood in Plano, built somewhere in the 90s. So it's not a newer neighborhood, but it is the most expensive neighborhood in Plano. So that's a class B normally would be the 10 years ago class A. So if you look at the more established neighborhoods of Frisco, like Greyhawk, for example, that used to be class A about 10 years ago, that would be a solid class B right now. Prices are in the 500-600, nice houses, high-end neighborhood, just not as new. So that would be class B. Class C, you'll find, just think about blue collar, right? A lot of the neighborhoods in Garland, Mesquite, Richardson, East Plano, Old McKinney, like East McKinney, those places are what I would consider a C class. Hardworking families that have income, just not the highest income. Think blue collar. And then D class, D as in David, those are really the war zones, the hoods, the crime-ridden, the low-income neighborhood. And generally, and that's the weird part about real estate, is the rougher the neighborhood, the worse condition the property is, the better it looks on paper. So it looks great on paper if I can get $900 rent for a property I can buy for $80,000. But the problem is that in that neighborhood, the joke I tell my clients is you're gonna have to get 2 German Shepherds and a shotgun to go collect your rent. But the reality is it only looks good on paper. And the reason for that is because these kind of clientele usually, not all of them, but usually they don't take care of the property. When they move out, you're gonna have a lot of repairs to do, and you're gonna have to evict them a lot of the time. You're gonna have a lot of turnaround. So all these things are falling into what investors call Capex, capital expense, and not necessarily the operation expense, which is why it looks good on paper, but in reality, you'll be bleeding money. So we really don't like these kind of properties. So that's one thing. And I try to help my customers understand that this is a headaches to returns kind of ratio that they have to look at. If I have the choice of making, I don't know, $400 a month cash flow in a C-class neighborhood, or $300 or $200 cash flow in a B-plus neighborhood, I'll take the B-plus neighborhood any day. A lot less headaches, a lot less concerns. The properties will be newer. The properties will be in better condition. The clientele will be one that I have to deal less with in terms of chasing, getting paid for rent and getting evictions and so on. So that's the highest level conversation when you talk to your investors. Yes, the lower income looks better on paper, but they usually generate a lot more headache and a lot more Capex. So what do we need to look at in terms of numbers? And there's a reason why I opened an Excel file. And the reason is that if you're talking to an investor and their conversation does not include the words in my underwriting, in my Excel file, the way I look at the numbers, the way the numbers are calculated for me, and so on, then they're not investors. They're just emotional buyers. So help them understand that investment is a mathematics kind of decision. It's a logical decision. Emotions should not be part of it. We'll look at this Excel file as an example because it embodies most of the things that you got to think about when you think about buying an investment property. And then if I forget, then remind me to, oh, you know what, let's do it now. Let's talk about a unique way of investing called house hacking. House hacking is a term that just started being popular just a few years ago, following a very popular podcast called Bigger Pocket. And house hacking basically means you move into a house and you rent rooms, or you buy a duplex with and in both cases, you get an FHA loan with just a 3.5% down. And you live in one side or in one unit or in one room, and then you rent the rest of it. If you look at the math, for example, like a duplex where both sides are $1,600 and you can buy it for $400,000, that $1,600 that comes from the other side pays mortgage and taxes. So you practically live in free. So that's called house hacking. 2 years later or a year later, you can move out and do the same thing with another duplex or another house. And you basically got in with just 3% down. So that's really how house hacking got popular. It's a great thing if you have young investors or young people that want to be investors. That's a great way to get into it. I wish I was in this country when I was in my 20s and was able to do this thing. It's great. I have a client that just closed on a duplex in Plano, and he's doing just that. He put just about 5% down, lives in one side and rents the other side for almost $2,000, practically lives for at least less than what he would pay rent for. So that's a really cool thing for a guy, he's what, 26? He already owns his own home and has a rental unit. How many 26-year-olds do you know that can say that? So house hacking is a great idea if you're talking to younger investors. And again, there's no shame if they get help for mom and dad. So my plan, my personal plan for my kids, when they go to college, I'm going to buy them a duplex or a triplex or a fourplex somewhere around where they are with their name on it, and they're going to be landlords. They're going to learn how to be landlords. They're going to learn how to lease the units or lease the rooms or whatever it is, and they're going to get that kind of education while they get their formal education. Even if you have a younger person and mom and dad are the investors, that's another way to help them get into the investing game. So now let's talk numbers, right? And let's first kind of review what's important when we look at a property to buy. So first, we got to look at purchase price, right? What are we buying it for? What's the comps? In real estate, there's 3 rules, right? One is you make your money when you buy. There's no way to overpay and do a great deal unless you lucked out and timed the market. And we don't, and hope is not a strategy. So we work with our investors to say, hey, look, this is the property. It's worth this much. If we can get it at that much or less, then we can make a good deal here. We cannot overpay. And I know today's market is insane. Everybody's overbidding, but it's really just a deformed way of looking at it. It's not like people are paying more than what it's worth. It's the agent priced it below what it should have been priced. That's really what it is, because the market determines what the value of the property is. You make your money when you buy. The second rule of real estate is location, and that's the conversation we had about the classes of the neighborhood and so on. So location, because that's the one thing we can't change about a property. We can change layouts, we can tear down walls, we can redo kitchens, we can change the backyards, put a pool, fill a pool, do whatever we want. The one thing we can is lift that house and put it in somewhere else. So location is super important. And then the last thing is buy for cash flow, because hope is not a strategy, right? So we try to teach our investors to go for cash flow. If we were in a market like San Diego, Seattle, New York, Miami, over there, it's all buying for appreciation, right? It's all buying for hope. We're not in such a market. Thank God Dallas didn't turn into one of those. Austin is on its way to turn into one of those. But for now, our markets are more about cash flow than it is about appreciation. Understanding the neighborhood and what its profile is also very important. So if the entire neighborhood is, let's say, 2 bedrooms, 1 bath, because it's an older neighborhood, or 3 bedrooms, 2 baths, and your investor finds a house that is 6 bedroom, 4 bathrooms, it's an anomaly. The other way around too. If all the neighborhood is 5 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, or 4 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms, and you find a 3-1, it's anomaly. Anomalies sometimes can be good, but a lot of the time they don't conform to the neighborhood, which means A, it's going to be really hard to figure out what the value is, and B, it's not the right kind of clientele for the neighborhood. So if I'm looking at a nice neighborhood in Frisco or Plano or Allen, where it's all families that are more mature, 4 bedrooms, 2 baths, usually it will be a family with 3-4 kids that rent over. Finding a 3-1 over there is going to be a challenge, right? Because it's not that kind of neighborhood. The people that are looking to move into that neighborhood will have more kids than they can handle in a 3-1 property. But if it's a young neighborhood where there's a lot of young families, right, a 3-2 is a great place to be. So that's another thing that you want to look at. Just trying to find things that conform to the neighborhood, because that's the kind of clientele that will be attracted to the neighborhood. By the way, as I'm flying here, if you have any questions, feel free to stop me or slow me down. So let's look at numbers. This is a fictional numbers. Those are not, let's say I have a list price of 238. The offer number is where I can play with things, and you'll see me touch that in a few seconds. But it's always important to have what's the listing price and what's the offer price, so I can figure out where do I fall. Because if I end up with my numbers having to be, let's say 150,000 to meet my goal, then that's almost $100,000 below asking price. In today's market, it's not gonna. So that's why I always have both list price and offer price next to each other, so I can figure out if the number I need to offer in order to make my goals work, then I can see the comparison, right? How many bedrooms do I have? What's the square footage? How many units? Because this should support 2 bedrooms, 1 bedrooms, and so on. I'm sorry, not bedrooms, 2 units, 3 units, 4 units, because the 1-4 contract is all on conventional loans, right? So even duplexes and fourplexes can get a 30-year fixed FHA loan on them. So that's why we all here on the 1-4. The next thing we need to figure out is what are the taxes, right? This is going to be one of the biggest expenses your investor is going to have on the property, and that's property taxes. Some counties are very aggressive, like Dallas and Collin County. Some of them are a little bit less aggressive, like Denton and Grayson and Wise. So just got to be figuring out what's the taxes, because that's going to be painful. This is a calculated column, basically says what's my taxes per month. It's just this number divided by 12. Homeowner insurance, I have a formula here. Everything went up, so it probably should upgrade that formula. But that's going to be the next kind of big. Guys, give me a second to shut down the AC because it's making a lot of noise here. Sorry about that. Okay, homeowner insurance, I would highly recommend that when you work with investors that they have an insurance agent to give them the quotes, because it's, first of all, it's not your homeowner insurance, it's a landlord policy for investors that don't live in the house. Those are going to be different from a client to client, and they're going to be different from one agency to another. For example, it's been a long time since I shopped around, but Allstate always had the cheaper price for landlord policy if you had your home and car with them. You could find landlord policy cheaper somewhere else if you don't have the home and insurance. But if you have a full package with Allstate, they usually were the cheapest a few years ago when I shopped. The interesting news that we're going to share with everybody soon is that we're actually working on adding insurance to our group. And once we'll have insurance, then we'll be able to offer your clients quotes in real time and help them get better rate. HOA is a big factor when coming to investment properties, homeowner associations, and they're a big factor for a few things. One, they tend to take a big chunk out of the monthly profits, especially in the nicer neighborhood. Worse when it comes to apartments and townhomes are almost always a poor choice for investment cash flow wise, because the HOA is significantly larger compared to the rental income that you get. Another reason to watch for HOAs is the regulations, the rules and regulations. So for example, if your clients want to do a short-term rental kind of thing, I'd say 95% of all the HOAs out there have a rule somewhere that forbids short-term rental. If you know that your client plans on doing short-term rentals, a phone call to the HOA is something that I would consider a good service from your as their agent to verify that they are allowing short-term rentals in that neighborhood. And then the next question you want to talk to an investor about is, what's your down payment? Are you going to put all cash? Are you going to put 25%, 20%? 50%, whatever it is. One thing I would highly recommend, and you should recommend to your investors as well, is that to always measure the properties with the same number. As you can see, my down payment here is 25% across the board. It doesn't matter if I plan on paying cash or I plan on paying 50% or 30% or 10% down, if I can get away with it. By doing that, equalize everything to compare apples to apples. I'll underwrite everybody at 25%, and then if I can get 20% down from my lender, of course I'll put 20% down. The higher the leverage, the better it is in real estate. And then I have a formula that calculates the mortgage, property management. That's another thing that's going to be highly subjective to your, do they do self-management? Do they have a property management company they already work with? Does that company work in the area where this property is? Do they charge 5%, 7%, 10%? I've seen all the range between 5 and 10%. Very specific to your clients, but property management should be part of the calculations. And then these are just calculated fields that tells me, okay, what's going to be my cost per month before mortgage, with mortgage. Income, that comes from your comps, right? When you work with an investor, one of the most important things you can deliver to them is rental comps. What can you get for that property in that neighborhood? And that's very important. And we talked about how to do comps, but if you want, we can revisit that in another opportunity. But figuring out what is a realistic rent for that property is one of the most critical things for you to do for your investors. Obviously, always recommend that they do their own due diligence as well, liability-wise, but that's really what it is. And then cash flow per unit is very simple. It's like income less my cost with the mortgage. What do I have left in my hand after everything is said and done during the month? Do I need rehab? Let's say that property needs $10,000 worth of rehab. And that tells me how much money am I going to need to have out of pocket, give or take. It's probably a little bit higher with closing costs and everything, but that's give or take what I'm going to have to get when I'm at the end of the day. So having that number also help our investors know, can they buy this property or not? Because this number needs to be in their checking account, available immediately, because renovation is going to have to be paid.
Is this number includes the renovation, or is it just the 25% down?
Yeah, no, it's a 25% down plus the renovation. And note that it multiplies the offer price, not the list price. So if I'm going back to, let's say I'm going to offer to 20, now I need 65.
Oh, it's out of the course.
Always out of the offer price. One thing that is not included here, and the reason it's not, it's because it's kind of like, depends on your investor's philosophy, is Capex, or a budget for repairs. And not this repairs, not the rehab I'm going to do after I buy the property, but ongoing repairs. I need to call a plumber or an electrician or an AC technician and so on. Where's that money coming from? So there's two really ways to look at. Some people put a percentage of it in the calculation. So there will be another, let's say, another column here that's called Capex. Capex stands for capital expense, right? And now let's say I can put 10%, I can put $100, I can put $200, I can put whatever number I want here. Or there's some people that say, you know what, I'm going to put aside $20,000 in an account that I never touch, and that's for surprise fixes and normal repairs in an ongoing, for all my properties ongoing. Two different ways to look at it. It depends on your investors. It depends on what they do, how many properties they have, how they handle. A lot of the property management companies will do that out of the income. So at the end of the month, you'll get a statement of, okay, income $1,650. We spend the $235 to call an AC technician. Then you get, I don't know, what is that, 14, 15 left. And then that's what gets deposited to your account. Some people do that. Some people use a separate account. Some people prefer to use a credit card because they get the points or the cash back. It's so widely different out there. That's why it's not in this Excel. Also, huge difference between a young investor that doesn't need the cash flow from the property. So whatever is left at the end of the month goes into a bank account, and that bank account is also used for repairs. And they never see it. They never touch it. They don't even look at it. Versus you have a 60-year-old couple that needs that cash flow for retirement, for supplementing their income, and they have to put some money aside for their repairs every month just to not be surprised by it, and so they can consume the rest of it. Does that make sense? Any questions so far? Okay, if you have a short-term investor, this doesn't apply, right? Because the way short-term rental would look like is there's going to be a much higher number here, and there's going to be another column for supplies, right? Like toilet paper and ketchup and so on. And then I'm assuming the property management include the cleaning fees and all, but the percentage is going to be a lot higher. Usually they're in the 15 to 25%. And then the income obviously is going to be different, but it's also going to be fluctuating every month. This says, this is my rent, I get $1,650 every month. With short-term rental, this can be $400 one month and $4,000. So short-term rentals cannot use this kind of to do their math. They need to use a little bit more sophisticated one that accounts for the seasonality. Okay. So really, what's the best way to go about finding good investment properties for our clients? I was talking to Laura the other day and I was telling her that, share my...
Now for the chart, before you move on, Yossi.
Yeah.
When you have an investor, you present the chart and you teach him what every column means, and then he's going to fill in the numbers with every property that we find for him. He's going to do it for himself, or you're going to do it for everything? For like every property for him.
So our job is sometimes to educate us. Sometimes we get clients that are already educated, and then if they're not educated, we got to educate them. So you don't have to show them the chart, but you walk them through this and teach them what's important, what's not important. And then when they get a grasp of it, then they'll do their own, right? You don't need to go ahead and do that for them every single time. That's just going to be...
So just the first time to like present the chart and guide them through it, and that's it, guide them through it.
If they need education, then yes, but a lot of the time they will have their own. They already have an Excel file, which is a great opportunity to tell them, hey, share with me your Excel file, because a lot of people will have different formulas. My Excel file has my formulas. They might have their own formulas and they might calculate things differently. So you want to know how they calculate so you can figure out how to find the properties that fit their formulas.
Okay.
Okay. Can you see my MLS? Okay, awesome. Well, one of the things that I told Laura you can do is just look at all the closing, let's say in the last year in, let's pick a smaller city, Addison. Addison's not going to be pretty. Let's do Plano. No, Plano is not a zip code. And then I'll go to the map. So if I want to really know how to help, if somebody tells me I want to find an investment property in Plano, then I need to start learning the city, right? So since I went a year back, there's going to be a lot of sales. Let me cut it down a little bit. Let's say 180. Okay. And I can come down to the neighborhood level. So let's say, remember I mentioned Willow Bend earlier? Here's Willow Bend. So I'm looking at Willow Bend and I'm going $1,200,000, $1,100,000, $1,200,000, $1,100,000, $1,100,000. Million, a little under $1,900,000, $1,050,000, $1,200,000, 805, 1.2, 1.3, 660, 1.4, 900, 850. So now that I know Willow Bend, right, and the price ranges, usually over $1 million, I know that if I see another one of those 660, wait a second, that's half the price of what a Willow Bend property should look like.
But this one is way smaller than the others. This one probably way smaller than the others.
This is 4,100 square foot. It's not a big difference within a block, right? So it's an anomaly, right? So this is really where investors thrive. Investors thrive on anomalies. When I find a property that is half the price, everything else, that's an anomaly, right? And this is from the last 6 months. This is not 2019, right? We can dig in and if anybody's interested to see, but obviously this thing flew off the market pretty quick, I'm guessing. Let's see, where's the, well, actually, no, look, it's been on the market forever. So there was
something about it.
Yeah, there was a story over there. And there's always a story. There's always a story, right? So the point is finding anomalies only happens when you know the neighborhood. So going back to, let's pick another neighborhood. How about this neighborhood? I'm looking at this neighborhood.
Looks familiar.
Yeah, it looks familiar. So I'm looking at the numbers and I'm saying, okay, where is White Castle? Because that sounds like a really cool name. Laura, the inside joke is that this is, where's White Castle? There it is. This is White Castle, right?
Yeah.
700, 600, 768, 900, 900, 775, 689. Okay. So I'm looking at the neighborhood, 600 to 800 seems to be the majority of all the numbers. And boom, an anomaly, boom, an anomaly. But is it an anomaly? And then I can drill down and see, wait a second, no, this area has much smaller lots and probably smaller houses. It's three bedroom, versus these are 4 and 5, right? So it's not really an anomaly. It's just a sub area inside that neighborhood. But everything else is in the 6 to 900 range. So if I'm looking for a house in that neighborhood and something pops up in the 400 or 500, then I say, okay, worth looking at it. Here's another one, Deerfield, Texas, right? 800, 600, 800, 500, 600, 500, 700, 600, 700, 6, 6, 8, 7, and so on. This is like the range, right? So learning your neighborhoods and learning the ranges will allow you to look at what's new on the market. And how do we do that? We go to the dashboard and I say, okay, show me residential, new listings. And we just looked at 3 neighborhoods in Plano. Here is Willow Bend, 1.2, 1.3. So they are within range, right? Here's Deerfield, 700 within range. Here's Waffle Tree, 800, 800 within range. So the neighborhoods I know, nothing popped out that said, ooh, anomaly. You can also build custom searches, and that's the cool thing. You can build as many custom searches as you want. But what I can do, if I want to really go the extra mile, I can do a search, and I can take Waffle Tree, and I can draw the boundary. I just took out that little neighborhood, that little area of the neighborhood. And I'm going to say in my criteria, instead of closed, I want to see active and coming soon, right? And I know, before that, let me do this real quick. Show me the closed. Did you know, by the way, you can add columns here? Okay, so I'm looking at $1 per square foot, and I see it goes between 146 to 208. So I'd say this one is probably the bottom line. So I'd say, okay, in this neighborhood, now I can change my criteria to active, coming soon, with a price per square foot of 130 or less. There's nothing that matches now, but I can save that search. And if anything pops up in Waffle Tree under $130 per square foot, now I know it's an anomaly. But if I picked entire Plano at 130 below, there's nothing in Plano under $130 per square foot right now, right? I cleared the map, Plano, Texas, yeah. There's nothing in Plano under 130, so I can do that search for the entire city, and when one pops up, I can look at it. But normally neighborhoods would have different prices per square foot, and cities are going to be big enough to have variations that just doing a search by square foot is not really a great option. I have a search per square foot, and you can see the void that is Plano, Adel, McKinney, right? Nothing in Salina, Prosper, nothing in Anna, Melissa, but Garland, Mesquite, the southern side of Dallas, the Fort Worth area have a lot more. So that's how the price per square foot plays. This is old. That one actually is an auction, by the way, so that it's 10 acres. I wish it was for 250, but it's an auction. No anomaly here. Does that make sense? Like how we look for stuff for investors? Here's another search I have for an investor. It's called motivated sellers, right? Right now, there's only one that's considered motivated seller, and because I'm actually looking for the words motivated seller, right? Let's take off the price per square foot. So now I have 9 properties in the entire MLS that have the combination of words motivated seller. But then again, when you're asking for $1.7 million, you're not really a motivated seller, right? Maybe the house is worth $2 million, and that's why it's considered motivated seller. But that's really, in today's market, when it's a seller's market, finding the combinations of the word motivated seller is hard, right? Look, this is the entire MLS. I have 9, and one of them is even not in this state. Does that make sense? So these are really ways to help our investors find deals. We can also look for, go back. we can look for words like divorce. There's nothing. We can look for words like probate. There's one of those. We can look the word estate. There's 7 of those. We can find the words urgent. Nothing there. You got to remember, this is kind of like the market we're in right now. A lot of distress, and I always look for private remarks and description, because sometimes it's there and sometimes it's somewhere else. Here's 2 more where they have estate in there. Nothing with divorce, but we know people get divorced and we know it's on the market. They just have a smart enough agent not to put it on there. And then one more thing you can look at, and that is, where's that type? Second. Here, seller type. You see that? So you have builder and standard individual, but you have real estate owned, bank owned, you have auction, you have bankruptcy. They added a bunch of new types to this one. HUD owns, in foreclosure, notice of default, probate listing, short sale, and requires third-party approval. And now I went to 144 matches. All right, add my 130 minimum, and now I'm at 74, and now I can really look at, okay, these have a good chance of having being a good deal. One more place you can start looking at is HUD homestore.gov, and this is basically HUD foreclosures. You have to be a HUD broker to submit offers, or be with a HUD broker. And we are HUD approved. You can search here and we can put offers for your clients. This was empty 6 months ago. Now there's 17 listings. This is a conversation for another day, because there's a lot of rules around who can buy those.
What's the name of that website? I'm sorry. HUD?
HUDhomestore.gov. I'm going to put it in the agent's WhatsApp for everybody.
Or just a short link in there.
Yeah. Okay. So really, since we work mainly with investors, there's a lot of ways we can help investors find good properties. I'm just going to show you my Facebook Messenger real quick, and to kind of help you understand the extent of what I was talking about when I mentioned earlier with the numbers, right? This is how many messages I got when I posted the off-market property all the way down to here. All these people. I already have 1 cash offer sitting in my inbox, and I know Revitali is working on another offer, and I got 2 more that said they're going to send offers. And I didn't even go to MLS yet. And if you want to see the message that I put, I don't know if you saw it or not, but here it is. Off market, client is selling, a little bit of information. Here's the asking price. I'm a licensed agent and it will go on the market, but I have permissions to do that. But the thing is, it's posted in about 40 different. I took the time and it's just copy paste, really. It's not that big of a deal, but you'll get comments like this, and you'll also get direct messages and so on. So just keep that in mind, that this is part of prospecting, just exploding this everywhere. Okay, any questions so far? I don't think we have time to go through the realty back office, so we'll do that some other time. Let me share my Excel file again, see if you have any questions for that one. Any questions at all?
Yes, can you please, I know you sent it to me before, but can you please send me again the Excel file, that chart you have?
Okay, yeah, it's not a problem. Any other questions? Laura?
Sorry, I couldn't unmute it. No, I'm good. Thank you.
Okay, sounds good. So if you have any questions, or if any of your investors have any questions, feel free to send them to me, or set up a conference call with your investors. I've done that multiple times before. That's not a problem. It's your clients, obviously. I'm not doing anything to jeopardize that, but I'm here to support.
Thank you so much. Yes.
Okay, then we'll just end this one short today, and I'll upload it once I have it edited. And if you have anything else, you know where to find you guys. Thanks, guys.
You.
Bye.
Bye.